The story of Ishmael begins with a divine promise made to Abraham, a man chosen by God to become the father of a great nation. Despite this grand promise, Abraham and his wife, Sarah, remained childless for many years. And as they grew older, their hope for a child began to wane. Faced with the passage of time and the absence of a child, Abraham and Sarah grew impatient. Sarah, who had not been able to conceive, proposed a solution rooted in their cultural practices. Abraham should have a child with her Egyptian maidservant, Hagar. This was a common practice at the time for women who could not bear children. Abraham accepted Sarah's suggestion, and Hagar became pregnant. The immediate consequence of this decision was tension and strife within the household. Hagar's pregnancy led to friction, as she began to look down upon Sarah, who had suggested the arrangement. Sarah, feeling wronged, treated Hagar harshly, which resulted in Hagar fleeing into the wilderness. In the wilderness, Hagar encountered a divine messenger who assured her that her son would be a significant figure. She was instructed to return to Sarah and submit to her, with a promise that her son would become a great nation. Despite the turmoil, Hagar returned and gave birth to a son named Ishmael, meaning God hears because God had listened to her suffering. Years later, when Isaac, the child promised to Abraham and Sarah, was born, the dynamics in the household changed. As Isaac grew, Sarah noticed Ishmael mocking her son, which led to Sarah demanding that Hagar and Ishmael be sent away. Although this was a difficult decision for Abraham, he was reassured by God that it was the right course of action. Abraham provided Hagar and Ishmael with supplies and sent them away. They wandered in the desert until their provisions ran out. In despair, Hagar placed Ishmael under a bush and moved away, not wanting to witness his death. In her desperation, she cried out for help. At that moment, God intervened. He sent a messenger to comfort Hagar and provided her with a well of water to sustain them. God reiterated his promise that Ishmael would become a great nation. Hagar and Ishmael were saved from death, and they eventually settled in the wilderness, where Ishmael grew up to become an archer and start a family. Ishmael's descendants, known as the Ishmaelites, became a notable group in the region. Though they were often in conflict with other nations, the promise made to Hagar about Ishmael's future was fulfilled. The story of Ishmael serves as a reminder of how divine plans and human actions intersect. Despite the complications and mistakes made by Abraham and Sarah in their impatience, God's promises were not derailed. He continued to show his faithfulness and compassion, providing for Hagar and Ishmael and ensuring that his plans would be realized.